y'all, it's Hannah and Jeremy. And if you saw our last video, you know that we had to be quarantined on our Alaskan cruise. The morning we docked in Skagway, we spent the day resting and enjoying what we could see from our balcony. When we left the port of Skagway, we headed towards Glacier Bay.
There's a tail and another one.
The next morning, as we entered the national park, we were blessed by some of the whale sightings, setting the tone for an unbelievable day. As part of the partnership that the cruise lines have with the National Park Service, park rangers come on board the ship very early in the day to guide us through Glacier Bay and to share their vast knowledge of the park. I'm going to let Ranger Billy tell us all about our cruise through Glacier Bay.
You should see two maps, one of the overall view of the park in all its 3.3 million acre glory, and a smaller zoomed in version on the right that shows our journey today. We'll focus on that zoomed in version. Your ship started this morning in Icy Strait at the bottom of your map. I started my morning this morning at 5 a.m. at park headquarters, near where it says Visitor Center. My coworkers and I caught a ride with a Park Service transfer vessel and climbed on board your ship in Setaka Day Narrows. Some of you early risers might have seen us this morning, but if not, there will be another chance to see us off this afternoon. My fellow rangers and I like to say that the best place to see the glaciers and the wildlife is not the right side or the left side, but outside. If you do choose to go outside, Monkey Island is open at this time, and that can be a great place to see the glaciers. We like to say that wildlife viewing is a team sport, and often myself up here on the bridge or other parts of the ship, we don't always get to see, can always see the same wildlife that you can from your vantage point. So again, if you see some wildlife, I know some folks have already seen whales and sea otters as we've been coming up bay today. So if you see any of those make a new friend, and point it out to the rest of us, and we're all going to get to enjoy a spectacular Glacier Bay day together here today. But Glacier Bay has not always looked like this. Centuries ago, the lower bay was not water, but land, with spruce trees for canoes and plenty of wildlife for hunting. Around 250 years ago, the Grand Pacific Glacier surged forward very quickly and forced the Tlingit to abandon their villages and flee their homes here. The Tlingit escaped and built new homes for themselves across Icy Strait in the village of Hoonah, where they still live today. The Tlingit are a resilient people, and they returned to Glacier Bay once that glacier receded, and they are still here today. Their name for Glacier Bay is Sit'iti Geyi, or the bay in place of the glacier. Most of you probably associate the name John Muir with Yosemite, which he was partially responsible for saving as a national park. But in 1879, he was a young, little-known naturalist who had a theory that the amazing geography of Yosemite had been formed by ice, by glaciers. In California, he was thought he was crazy. Once people started reading John Muir's articles about Glacier Bay, both tourists and scientists started coming here in the 1880s to see the wonders of this place. One of those scientists was Harry Fielding Reid, a geologist who worked with John Muir to study the glaciers here. Reid and Muir even built a cabin together at Muir Glacier to serve as a makeshift laboratory and home base for their future studies here. Reid Glacier on our left is the first tidewater glacier of the day. It's 3/4 of a mile wide, 150 feet high at the face, and it's 9 miles away from its origin up in the Brady ice field, high in the mountains above us. At this point on our cruise today, you may be saying, Ranger Billy, we've come all this way and you haven't even talked about glaciers yet. What is a glacier anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. I like to think of glaciers as rivers of ice. Most of us know how streams and rivers work. Water follows the path of least resistance, going downhill with gravity. Glaciers work the same way, only with snow and ice. When more snow falls in the mountains than can melt during the summer, it compresses and becomes solid ice. All of that ice has to have somewhere to go, and gravity pulls it downward and causes it to flow just like a river. Glaciers can grind down just about anything in their path, chewing up the sides of mountains as they go, like giant bulldozers. That's why the glaciers sometimes look dirty or have gravel and rocks in them, because they're carrying debris from the mountains they just chewed up. This summer, Glacier Bay National Park is anticipating 600,000 visitors. In most national parks, that number would bring with it a lot of challenges. How do you provide lodging, food, roads, and services to all of those people who want to come see your park? But of course in Glacier Bay, 95% of those visitors will be arriving via cruise ships like yours. A maximum of 2 cruise ships per day are allowed in Glacier Bay to lessen the impact of tourism on the park's wilderness. Very few people actually set foot on the land, which minimizes the impacts on the landscape. We're now approaching Marjorie Glacier on our port side, and the Grand Pacific Glacier straight ahead. And most people think of the blue pillars of Marjorie as being the most beautiful. And she is, at 1 mile wide, 20 miles long, and 250 feet tall. That's as tall as a 25-story building. And that's only above the water. There's another 100 feet of ice below the waterline. Our ship today is about 150 feet tall from the waterline to the top of the smokestacks. So that means that the Marjorie Glacier is going to be about 10 stories taller than our ship. A lot of people think of Marjorie as the more photogenic of the two glaciers, with her blue ice and her more frequent calving. But I like to think of the Grand Pacific, at 1 mile wide, 22 miles long, and 150 feet high straight ahead of us, as the most impressive. That dark mass in front of us, coming down from Canada, that looks like a lot of dirt and gravel now, once stood 4,000 feet tall and covered all of Glacier Bay, 65 miles of ice, running south to Icy Strait. It's the same one that drove the Tlingit out of their homeland, and the same one Captain Cook saw that had all of the bay locked up in ice. This calving that we saw today is triggered in a tidewater glacier through interactions between the ice and relatively warmer salt water. The blue ice that we saw could be 200 years old, falling as a snowflake back when the United States was still a young country. It has been a pleasure today to take you on a trip through time, through a place that on first glance may seem like a vast, unpeopled wilderness, but on further investigation has a wealth of stories to share about the people that have come before us and are still here today. Glacier Bay is a place that provides sustenance and nourishment to people and animals, and a place that inspires awe in all who are fortunate enough to visit here. I'd like to leave you today with a quote from Septima Collis. She was one of those travelers here in the 1880s, and she came back home and wrote her daughter about her Alaska cruise. After seeing these glaciers that you saw today, she said, "No camera, no pencil, no vocabulary can do more than produce a desire to see it for oneself. I can only say that it has been my fortune to behold much that is grand in nature, at home and abroad, but the hours spent at the glaciers made the great event of my life. If God spares me, I hope to see it often." My hope for all of you is that seeing the glaciers today has been a great event in your life, and that you may see them again someday. Thank you to the captain and crew, and I wish you all fair winds and following seas.